Hello, everyone. Today we have the amazing Judi with us. Judi's daughter is type 1 diabetic, and they went. I'm not going to get into it. Go ahead and tell us your story, Judi.
Yeah, hey Justin, great to talk to you. So yeah, you're right. I'm probably one of the first people that you've perhaps talked to on this show that doesn't actually have type 1 diabetes myself. So my type 1 journey and my story is all to do with my daughter Amy, who is the type 1 in the family.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she was diagnosed a little bit over 3 years ago. She was 10 at the time. And it was just a total shock. It come out of the blue. There's no one in our family that has type 1. It was totally out of the blue, yeah. So we didn't know anything about diabetes. We didn't know how to manage it. And it basically changed our lives, as you can well imagine.
When you first when she first got diagnosed with diabetes, you said 3 years ago?
Yeah, just over 3 years, yeah.
What did they tell you about how to manage it? Did you know anything about it?
Yeah, no, we knew absolutely nothing. In fact, I was so ignorant about it. I didn't even know what diabetes was. I didn't know it was a blood sugar problem. I didn't know that you had to, have basically, all I knew was that you had to have insulin. I didn't even know what insulin was. I just thought, I just had a couple of injections every day. Hey, that's okay. You can do that. We were lucky because Amy wasn't afraid of needles or anything, so I thought, that's okay, we can manage, sure. And looking back, I think it's probably pretty good that I didn't know much about it at the time, because when you get that diagnosis and if you knew what was ahead of you, I probably would have been a lot more frightened than I was. So I just thought, we can do this is okay, we can manage. So we set off on our journey, and we had the 5 days in hospital, which is probably pretty standard. I think we had probably not as bad an experience as a lot of other people, in that we had a lot of training, I guess you could say. We were given an absolute stack of information, and we were told, pretty clearly what we needed to do from their, standard perspective of dosing with insulin and eating lots of carbs. So we set out doing that. We did actually get to speak to a dietitian, and she asked us what we ate, and we basically went through a standard day. And so said, we have toast and cereal for breakfast, and then fruit and maybe a muesli bar or something for lunch, and then we'd have, salad or a salad sandwich or something for, later on, and then evening meal would be meat and veg and whatever. And so she said, you don't have to change anything. Your diet's really awesome. You're eating whole grains and you're eating, lots of fruit and vegetables, and you don't have to do anything. And, you can still have treats and all of that sort of thing. So we went along thinking, okay, well, feeling pretty good about ourselves. She said we're healthy, so fantastic. Let's go with that. So yeah, we left the hospital and tried our very best to basically dose. So Amy was doing MDI at that stage, so she had 1 dose of Levemir and then 3 shots of Nova Rapid throughout the day. And so we went along doing our very best trying to make this work, because I was like, I'm not going to let her, her life be ruined by this diagnosis and this change. So we were really diligent in what we were eating. We were counting our carbs. We were doing our, finger pricking, before every meal, and we were doing this, and it was really hard work. And we would find that, because of the massive doses of insulin and the massive amounts of carbs that we'd been told we needed to eat, basically she was just roller coasting. You know how it goes. So she'd be 18 1 minute, and then half an hour later she'd be zooming down into the 3s. And so it was a pretty tough time, and it took a lot to get used to. It was very stressful for the whole family. So we went along doing that for 6 months, and her doctor was basically really pleased. He said, you're doing awesome, you're doing great. I think her A1C was 6.3 at that stage. So as far as he was concerned, we'd nailed it. He's like, you're great, you're poster girl, you're best diabetic we've got and everything. And we just went going, yeah, but it doesn't feel good. This is, this is awful. So we went on doing that. He suggested at that point that we went on to a pump. And at first of all, Amy didn't really want to, but eventually we decided that we would give it a go and see what happened, because I said, you can always come off it. You can always go back to MDI if you want. Anyway, so we went on to the pump, and that improved things a little bit. So it made I think it made the basal dosing in particular a little bit easier for us. So Amy's only ever needed a very small dose of insulin. And of course, by the time, we were on the pump, she was honeymooning, so it decreased even more. So the pump did help a little bit, but we still just found that, we were on this roller coaster, and it was hard, really hard work. And I was just sort of sitting there after, 7 months or so thinking, how on earth are we going to do this for the next 10 weeks, let alone 10 years, let alone the rest of her life? So there was a big psychological component there that I just thought, how on earth, how are we going to manage this? So it was quite fortuitous at that point. I met up with a friend whose son has type 1 in local town, and we got talking, and I thought, we were talking about, really nice to have something to talk to you about, talking about basals and bolus and carb counting, and you know what you're talking about. You're like, you're talking my language. So that was really awesome. But, I sort of said, we're having a really hard time with this, and what should we do? And she said, we actually do it quite differently now, she said. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we don't eat so many carbs. I said, but you have to eat carbs. You have to eat 60 for breakfast, 45 for lunch, and, 90 for dinner, and whatever we'd been told we had to do. And she said, well, actually, no, you don't. If you eat less carbs, you use less insulin, and, it's a whole lot easier. And she said, I'll send you a link to a Facebook page, which was Type 1 Grit. And she said, I'll send you a link to Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes University videos. And from the moment I went home and looked at those, I was hooked. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't think of this. This is just ridiculous, So anyway, so I started the journey of looking into the low carb lifestyle and, low carb healthy fat and all of that sort of thing, and became fairly excited. I just thought, this could be the answer. This makes sense. It could be the way to go. So I basically started investigating how to go about a low carb lifestyle. So I got Dr. Bernstein's book and read that. And then we went to see a dietitian who's sort of favours low carb in Melbourne. And I said, look, I've got diabetes in the family, and, she's only 10, is this a safe thing to do? And she said, oh my goodness, it's the best thing you can do. So we did some internal blood works, with the cholesterol and thyroid and A1C and all of that. And we said, right, we're going to give it a shot. But I thought, okay, we're going back to see Amy's doctor in a couple of weeks. I thought I'd just better check with him and just make sure, because he's, giving us the insulin and whatever, better check this is okay. Mm-hmm. Went along and sort of said, can we discuss this? And he said, yeah, sure, we can discuss this. So we discussed this and basically got to the end of the appointment, and he said, well, he said, I've had some other kids that have gone low carb, but it hasn't worked out. They've had the worst blood sugars I've ever seen. He said, I really don't want you to do anything radical. So I was like, oh, okay, what do you mean? He goes, no less than 130 grams of carbs a day. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound very low to me, in the low carb sort of sense. So, and he said, no, I don't want you to do anything radical. That would be dangerous. I said, why? And he sort of went through and said, oh, kids need carbs to grow, and your brain needs carbs to survive, and all the story that you get. So anyway, to this point, I trusted the medical doctors and the health profession. I thought, these are professionals. They know what they're doing. Surely I'm a newbie to diabetes. I don't know anything about this. It's like, gosh, I better listen to what they're saying. So sort of went away thinking, am I doing something really dangerous? Am I putting my daughter's life, in danger sort of thing by suggesting this low carb thing? So I went back and did a bit more reading. And in the meantime, because we've been eating all these extra carbs that we'd never, we never used to eat that many carbs in a day. So the whole family would, having probably up to 300 grams a day, which was way more than we'd had. And during that sort of 6 months we'd been doing this, I basically ended up getting a whole lot of back pain and shoulder pain and all this sort of thing. Basically, I think partly from not exercising, because I was too afraid to go out and exercise and leave Amy alone. I thought, oh gosh, she's going to hypo, I better stick around. So I wasn't exercising as much as I used to, and plus we're eating all these carbs. So I wasn't feeling that great, and we got to a point where we were supposed to do a fun run This was in October, and after Amy was diagnosed in February. And the fun run was supposed to be to raise money for the hospital where we'd spent a week earlier in the year. I thought, okay, we'll go and do this fun run and raise some money for the hospital. Anyway, got to the week before the fun run, and I had pain in my shoulders. I could hardly move them. I'd been to the doctor and said, what's going on? He said, oh, you've got inflammation in your shoulders. I was like, oh, this is different. You know, I'm not that old yet. I don't feel ready to curl up and die with pain in my shoulders. Anyway, got to the Saturday we were supposed to go for the run, and I could not move my right shoulder. It was just frozen. The pain was just terrible. And I said to my husband, I can't do a fun run. You're going to have to take me into the hospital, into emergency. I need some pain relief. I'd been on some really heavy pain relief the week leading up to that, but it just wasn't touching it. So anyway, I went into the hospital and I went through triage, and then was sitting there, and I had to wait for about 4 hours to sort of see the doctor. And in that time, I basically had time to myself, and I was just thinking, and I was thinking about all the stuff I've been reading about low carb and healthy fat and all of that. And I thought, amongst all of that reading had come up against the, not just good for blood sugars, but low carb's also really good for reducing inflammation and helping people lose weight and all of these sorts of things. And I thought, wow, I think, for Amy's sake, we have to try it for her blood sugars. And I thought, for my sake, I have to try it for this, reducing his inflammation, because, I can't go through life falling apart. I've got to look after her. So that afternoon, I basically said, I'm not going to listen to what the doctor said. I'm going to go out and do my own thing. I'd convinced myself at that point. I'd done enough reading, I'd done a lot of reading, and looked at all the proper science and working out what was right and what was wrong. And I thought, I think we have to try this. And so I thought, let's give it a try for 3 months, see what happens. If it's not working, not great, we can always go back to the disaster that we've got now. So that was sort of the turning point where I really delved into saying, right, how do we do this? What do we cut out? What do we substitute with? And how do we go about it? So a couple of months after that, we were all ready to go. I thought, okay, let's do it. So basically we started with breakfast, and because that was the meal where she had like the worst spike after eating, and just, got rid of the bread and put in eggs and put in bacon and put in spinach and mushrooms, and that sort of thing. So we started off really simple, and within a day, like, the results were like, wow, this is awesome. We're onto something. So it just sort of progressed from there, and we just basically went through breakfast, and then we changed through to lunch, and then dinner was the easiest because you just cut out like the potato or the rice or the pasta or whatever. And yeah, within a few months, we were basically down to about 30 grams a day for Amy in carbs, and loving it. And her blood sugars were, well, you know what they do. They just went from crazy to awesome. And suddenly it wasn't so stressful, and it was so much easier to get through the day. And we just went, wow, this is really important. So that was sort of how it all started, and we haven't really looked back.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. And how long ago was this switch?
So it was about 2 years ago now. So we did about 9 months of, the roller coaster. And then it probably took us 2 or 3 months to sort of transition, down to where we are now. So it's at around about 30 grams a day. So yeah, and ever since, her blood sugars have been awesome. So her A1C has been 4.8 for the last 18 months. So it's pretty stable. And the other thing that I really noticed too was that her moods were like incredibly affected. So when she, before she was diagnosed, and then for the first 6 months or so afterwards, she would just be really angry and teary, and just, she'd have emotional outbursts, and I'd just say, what's wrong, Amy? And she'd go, I don't know. She'd say, I can't help it. I'm like, oh, we didn't really understand. But, once we'd normalised her blood sugars, all that went away. And so the doctors would, had been saying, oh, it's just teenager, it's hormones, la, la, la. And it's not. It wasn't her at all. It was just the high blood sugars. So once her blood sugars became normal again, she's back to her normal self, and she's just like a normal person, and she's happier, and she doesn't have these problems that, I think to me, it just seemed like it was totally due to the blood sugars. So as well as, them being under control, her emotions now are so much more stable, which is just as important, I think. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So her mood got better, her blood sugars got better, her A1C's down to 4.8, you said?
Yeah, it's been 4.8 for 18 months, so it's really stable. Yeah.
How has your doctor felt about it since you started? Have you been honest with him?
That's a really interesting question. So the first time we went back after we'd sort of gone to low carb, and we're probably on still 50 or 60 grams a day there, we sort of said, look, this is what we've done. And I was ready to sort of, get it into trouble a bit. But he couldn't really fault what we were doing. So at the end of that appointment, apart from being told off for a few hypos that she'd had, and when she did still have some hypos, but they're only in the 3s. So to me, if it's in the 3s, like, yeah, sure, you don't want to have them, but it's not like she's crashing down into the 2s or below. So if you guys, I think that's 40, or it's in the 40s or 50s or something. So it's not like a super low, and yeah, they do happen. But I sort of said, when they do occur, they're really slow and they're really easy to fix. So, instead of, having these crashing lows that you go from like 17 to 5 in half an hour, she might be just sort of drifting down from, 4 to 3.8 to 3.5. And then, when the CGM would link, she'd go, oh, I need to have 2 grams of glucose, and she'd fix it and she'd be back to 4.6 or, very close, without, then shooting up to 15 or whatever. So, so apart from being told off for the few hypos that she had, he sort of said, well, I can't really, tell you to stop. He said, because your A1C is obviously awesome and your CGM trace showed that it was all really, really good. So he said, keep doing what you're doing. So we sort of went around going, oh, okay. I had in my mind at that point, I thought, oh, we can teach him. We can show him how to do this, and he's going to learn from us. That was what I thought at the time. Fast forward probably about 12 months when we were still having, fantastic results. We kept on suffering from these lows. And of course, anything sort of under 3.5, he was picking up on and saying, oh, that's dreadful. We just got to cut out all those lows. And of course, we were trying. We weren't trying to have hypos just to get a low A1C or anything. We were aiming for 4.6 all the time, and that was our goal. But of course, the lows did happen occasionally. And so we'd spoken to him, and he said, I'll pull back the basal rate. So we tried that, pulled back the basal, and of course, then our blood sugars went high. And so we put the basal back again. We did all sorts of shuffling around with, with the basal and everything, because we thought that's what the problem was. Anyway, we also saw a diabetes educator, and she was pretty much saying the same thing. She was saying, pull back on the basal, too much basal, da-da-da-da. Because, of course, there was more basal than bolus, because that's the way it usually works on low carb. And they said, there's too much basal there. So we pulled it back, and it just wasn't working. So eventually we had a situation where something else went wrong, and I sort of got to the point where I thought, this doctor and this educator, they're not helping us. They don't know how to manage this any better than what we do. We're doing our best, but there was still something wasn't quite right. So I thought, all right, I'm going to get some expert help. So that was when we brought in a new diabetes educator, and she's in the low carb community, and she was just amazing. She took one look at Amy's CGM trace, and she said, you're not bolsing correctly for protein. And we went, oh, okay. And you would know this, you've just done your protein video. So basically we pulled back on the basal and started bolusing correctly for protein. And since then, that's been the final 20% of our story, that now, a day's, honestly, the diabetes is just this tiny little piece of the day. It's always there, and it's not going to go away, and you always have to factor it in. But it's not something that you go, for example, if you're going on a run or a ride, or, you're going to a concert or something, you don't have to sort of go, oh, I have to worry about, my diabetes, or I have to, worry about what's going to happen, because you just take along your little gear, and you know that your blood sugar is going to be pretty normal, and, you've just got the stuff there ready to tweak either way, whichever you need to do. And that's kind of just the way that we roll at the moment. So it was just a learning curve to go, instead of trying to teach the doctors that really didn't know what they were doing, we went, no, we need someone to help us. So we ended up changing doctors, changing diabetes educators, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. But so far, so good. It's been awesome.
That's fantastic. And I mean, I really like that you mentioned you're still having to struggle with it at first. And one thing I got to drive home is that it's not just about low carb. That's why I'm making these videos, is because diabetes is so manual. More than anything else. Like, for most things, low carb is good for, like losing weight or type 2. You go on the diet and you get better, typically. But if you're on insulin, then it's a whole different bucket of worms, you know? And if only the doctors were actually knowledgeable in that field and could manage it, because what you said earlier about about your endo saying, oh, well, we have a few kids do that and it doesn't work out well. That's probably because they don't tell them how to do it. It's exactly not just low carb, it's managed low carb. There's a process, there are techniques. And if you don't learn them, you're not going to do well, you know?
That's exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably the trouble is that they don't know how to do it. You know, they don't know how low carb works. So, I mean, I don't even think they know how diabetes works, to be honest, because I often sort of thought, you know, what if this was your child? You know, this is what I think of it when I was talking to the doctor. It's like, what if this was your daughter and you had to watch her go through this each day, and not only every day, but knowing what her health outcomes would be for the future. So if she's got an A1C of 9 or, you know, something like that, she's on this roller coaster, you know, what's her life going to be like when she's turning 20 or 25 or 30? You know, what the impact that's going to have beyond the day-to-day is something else that I think you just sort of think, wow, you know, I didn't want to think about it. So that's the other thing. As a parent, you sort of look at your child's future and think, wow, they've got their whole lives ahead of them, and I want them to be able to do what they want to do. I don't want her losing her eyesight when she's, you know, 20, or losing a limb, or all of these other horrible stories that you hear about. And they do happen. You know, we get the Victorian, or one of the Australian Diabetes Association magazines every quarter, and in the last magazine there was a story of a girl who was 22 and she was blind because she had not taken good control of her blood sugars. I mean, 22, it's just awful. It's just, you know, so when you find something that is going to save your child from that experience, yeah, you're going to grab it, you're going to do whatever you have to do. So, and that's what we do. and we're very fortunate because well, I'm fortunate. Amy's a very mature girl, so she took the diagnosis really well. So she's just going, yep, this has happened, I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to ace it. She's, you know, so for her, getting a good A1C or getting good CGM trace is kind of like a challenge to her. She's like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it as best as I can do it. And she's also really aware that if she doesn't look after herself, she's going to be the one to suffer. So she was very frightened about losing her eyesight or whatever when she was diagnosed, because the doctors had said, you know, if you don't look after yourself, these things are going to happen. And she was like, oh, I don't want those things to happen. So that was why we originally tried to have really good blood sugars, and obviously it just didn't work out with the methods we've been given. So once we had the right method, we were like, wow, this is possible, and we can avoid these things, or at least, you know, delay them or minimize them as much as possible, so that you can have a normal, healthy, happy life that, you know, I expect her to go on to lead. So we're really happy.
It's amazing. And do you eat does the whole family eat low carb, or is it just her?
Yeah, no, the whole family does. We all have our own sort of limits, if you like. So Amy and I are very similar in terms of size and height now. Or she's a bit taller than I am now, which isn't difficult. But yeah, so we're both very low. So we both would have like less than 30 grams a day. My husband is taller and more athletic, so he probably has a bit more, but he would still be very low carb. And my son, so Amy's little brother, he has a little bit more than Amy, but he's still low. So I pack the same lunches for them essentially and they eat the same dinner. They might have slightly different, say, for example, Flynn, Amy's brother, will have snacks, whereas Amy doesn't snack between meals anymore. So there's little differences like that because he's a younger boy and all of that. But we're all low carb, and we try to stick with that. And being low carb, we're all, gluten free as well, which means you don't have to worry about, potential celiac and all those sorts of things. So yeah, we all have our own version of low, but the whole family is low. So yeah,
that's great. And run us through a typical day. What do you typically eat in a day, you and the family?
I'll tell you what Amy eats because that's probably more relevant than what I eat. But
Sure.
So Amy's breakfast, we actually come up with quite a lot of different things that she can have for breakfast. So whether it might be eggs with some fried spinach and mushrooms and bacon, or she might have a frittata or an omelette. We can make like a cocoa-based omelette, so it's a chocolate omelette that she'll have with some coconut yogurt. And maybe a couple of raspberries or something on the side. Sometimes we do a low-carb porridge, which is basically like it's a coconut flour and almond flour type based porridge that you can get with some of the low-carb maple syrup or something on top. Or a chia pudding, so you can make chia puddings in all sorts of different flavours. So we do a carrot cake flavoured one, which is like got walnuts and pepitas and carrot and cinnamon, that sort of thing. Or you can do a chocolate one with cacao nibs and that sort of thing. So that would be her breakfast. And she doesn't have a morning snack, so that's easy. And then lunch is usually a salad of some sort with some meat. So she might have some cold lamb or some sliced chicken, something like that, with a big plate of vegetables. So it's usually like leafy greens and some capsicum and cucumber, that sort of thing. Potentially some seedy crackers, so we can make those seed crackers with like flax seeds and all that sort of stuff. They're pretty much zero carbs. That would be a normal lunch for her. So she doesn't eat dairy at the moment. We found that cutting out dairy for her decreases her insulin requirements like heaps, like almost 50%. So dairy is off the menu at the moment. So lunch done. Dinner will just be, probably we might have like some slow cooked beef or something with some roasted vegetables, plenty of broccoli, cauliflower, all those sorts of, good vegetables, or some Brussels sprouts done in butter or something like that. And once a week we also have dessert. So I get to flick through one of the nice cookbooks and choose a low-carb dessert, which is a bit of a treat. And then as another little treat on the weekends, she has a square of 90% dark chocolate with her lunch as well as a little treat. So we kind of try to mix things up, in terms of the meat and the veggies and that sort of thing. But a typical day is just 3 standard meals, no messing around. It's pretty simple. Yeah, it's good.
So pretty well-rounded meals she got going on. Not deprived or anything, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so simple. And the varieties, you can cook just about anything. It's just, once you've learned out what you don't want to include. So once you cut out the high carb stuff, you go, right, well, if I'm not having flour, I'll use almond flour. Or if you're not having, sugar, you use xylitol or whatever it might be. There's a substitute for everything. So it's so easy, really. It's planning. It's knowing and planning, I guess. That's what it is. So as long as you're prepared, it's really not that hard.
Great. And I know you had a problem at first with protein. Took a while to figure it out. Are there any other sort of key lessons that you learned that were making you struggle a little bit at first?
I think probably. When we first sort of switched across to low carb, we did include quite a lot of, the baked goodies that are so yummy. Some of the recipes from Carolyn Ketchum's book, they're treats really, aren't they? And maybe if you're really a super athletic sort of person, you can get away with eating them more often. But for us now, like the low carb muffins and desserts and things, they're really, once a week, or the cakes or whatever it might be for birthdays only. So we probably went a little bit overboard on the yummy stuff to start with, but pretty quickly figured that, pull it back to the basics and you're going to be a lot safer in terms of, both the health aspects and watching out for weight gain and that sort of thing. So that was one thing. I guess the other thing was sorting out exercise. So how to deal with exercise, so the different types. Amy's just come back from a 5-day hiking trip where she managed all her own insulin. So she took packed meals. I packed all her meals and had them all labelled and said what she needed to bolus for them and everything. But she managed her insulin and everything else entirely by herself. And part of that was knowing how to deal with the exercise. So lots and lots and lots of walking and some abseiling and rock climbing and that sort of thing. But we had a plan in place, and we're now pretty happy with knowing what you have to do for exercise, because that's the other thing that, you know, can perhaps trip you up. And, you know, if you're not prepared for it, if you've got too much insulin on board, you know, end up with some lows that you don't want. So dealing with exercise and protein, they're probably the two biggies that probably don't get covered very well by the standard. I mean, the information we got on exercise was eat a muesli bar before you go for a run. It's like, that's not very useful. It's like, you know, just basically carving up. We're just like, well, that doesn't work when you're doing low carb, and you don't need to do that. It's like, why would you want to go and eat, you know, all those carbs just to go for a run? That's kind of defeating the purpose. So, so learning how to deal with exercise is a biggie, but I think we're pretty good with that now. So, yeah.
How do you deal with exercise?
Well, so because Amy's still on a pump, and she's made a decision that works really well for her, probably for a couple of reasons that's the case. Partly it's convenience. You know, she just likes to have it there and she can quickly do a correction or whatever. And also because her basal needs are very low. So we did try MDI for a bit, and because diluent is hard to get here in Australia, it was really tricky to try and get the basal needs right for her. Also throughout the month, of course, it's nice to have the flexibility for that for a girl. So exercise for her now, she will generally put on a temp basal. So she'll reduce her basal to about 50% of its normal rate for about an hour beforehand. This is like for walking type, you know, running that she would normally drop from. But if she's doing like a high intensity exercise, like a short sprint or rowing, so they do rowing at school, she's doing that, she doesn't need to do a temp basal because her blood sugars will go up. In fact, sometimes she has to do a correction halfway through, like a rowing session, because her blood sugars are actually going up. And she's like, oh, going up to 7, I better do a little correction, and deals with it that way. But for the other exercises like walking and whatnot, she puts on a temp basal on the pump for an hour or so beforehand, and depending on how long the exercise goes for, she'll keep that on for another hour or so, and then it goes back to normal, and it seems to work pretty well for her. So, yeah. That's
great.
No drama.
That's great. Exercise is such a quagmire because, you know, for the light stuff, you need less insulin. For the heavy stuff, you might need more. It's a tough one.
It is, and I think it's something that's really personal too.
Yes.
So we've even noticed a difference. Like it'll depend on if Amy exercises in the morning, she needs a bigger reduction in her insulin than if she exercises in the afternoon. So if she's walking at 10 a.m. or something, she'll need less basal going in than if she went for a walk at like 5 p.m. So it's a very much a trial and error, and I don't see how you could possibly put a blanket statement on that. It really just has to be, you have to try it, you have to track it, see what works for you. So, yeah, and you can do that. Like as people with type 1, pretty good with numbers and tracking and working stuff out. You're like, you all have to be pretty clever. So, yeah, that's just what you have to do.
I see. And I wanted to ask, do you have any other tips, anything you wish you knew when you started this whole journey with diabetes, or Amy did?
That's an interesting question, because, like I said at the start, if I'd known then what I know now, I probably would have been more scared, but I probably would have been better prepared as well. I guess we were fortunate in that when before Amy was diagnosed, I recognised the symptoms of diabetes. And I've said this I've written a website that I've published just recently, and said there was a story in this that we knew a family about 10 years before Amy was diagnosed, when their youngest had just been diagnosed with type 1. And I'd said to the mother, just offhand, I just said, oh, how did you know he was sick? You know, what triggered you to know? And she said, well, he was really, really hungry, and then he got really, really thirsty, and then he started like going to the toilet heaps. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. Anyway, 10 years later, little did I know that when I saw those symptoms in Amy, I thought, hang on, there's something going on here. And I took her into the doctor and said, look, she's lost a lot of weight, she's tired, she's eating heaps, but she's getting skinnier, you know, she's drinking heaps and she's peeing during the night. And I said, I think she's got a blood sugar problem. I think she might have diabetes. And he looked at me and went, what are you talking about? You know, she looks well. She's been to school. What's the problem? She looks quite fine. And I said, yeah, just, I don't know, mother's intuition, something not right. Anyway, he agreed. He checked her urine, and sure enough, there was sugar and ketones, and that was the story. And next day we're in hospital. But I was fortunate, I think, to pick those symptoms before she got really sick. So even though I knew the symptoms and I knew probably what the problem was, once she was diagnosed, I had no idea what that meant. I really just thought it was a couple of injections a day, and I thought, oh, that's fine. What's so hard about that? You know, it's just, that's not too bad. But of course, when you learn what it really does mean, you're like, that's not so easy at all. So if I'd known back then what I know now, it probably would have been a different story. And I often wonder, you know, when I hear of someone that's just been diagnosed, I think, what do you tell them? I think I would like to see doctors come through with the right information. So saying, look, this is the optimal way to manage your blood sugars. We recognise that not every family is going to embrace that and be prepared to make that sacrifice, if you like, or to live that way. But I think if you don't give families that information, they've got no hope. You know, they tell you that this is the way to manage your diabetes. You haven't got a chance. There's no way that what they tell you to do is going to work. So I feel that, you know, the message that they're putting out there is setting parents like myself up, and anyone with type 1, they're setting us up to fail, because you can't win. So I would like to see them say, you know, try to manage your diabetes in this way, using low carb and all these other methods, and do the best you can. But if you're not given that information, you're not going to be able to win. So hopefully, I'm hoping that, you know, when the message gets out with these videos, and the message is getting out there, I know, it's changing. I do believe it's changing. And one day I hope that, you know, when kids or anyone gets diagnosed, they get the right information. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the most important thing with what we're doing here is to just spread awareness of this stuff and get in the know, especially with newly diagnosed parents. Like, I know you're going to be the annoying family member if you do it, but if you know someone that's just got diagnosed with diabetes, share this stuff with them. Yeah. Share it. The worst they can do is say no. You know? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. And people do, you know, sometimes you'll suggest, make a suggestion or something, and people go, oh, you can't do that, and they'll still listen to the, you know, the standard message. But I guess for people that, you know, do hear the message and think, I'm going to look into it, hopefully when the resources are there, they'll be able to embrace it and have the success that, you know, that they deserve.
Exactly. Now, what would you say is the best part about what you're doing now?
I reckon it's just the fact that diabetes can take a back seat. You know, you don't have to worry that Amy's blood sugars are going to be going from super high to super low in a really short amount of time. And, you know, if you just watch what things are happening, and you might do a little adjustment here and there. But in general, you know, she can go off to school and I'm not worrying about her. She can go on camp. And I was like, oh, off you go for it. You know, go and enjoy yourself, go and have fun, you know, live your life, do what you want to do, without having to worry every minute of every day. That's probably the best bit, I reckon.
That's great. Do you have anything else to add?
Can I say a few thank yous?
Yes.
I'd like to thank Lisa, who first introduced me to Dr. Bernstein and the GRIT group. That was most fortuitous, really. Thanks to RD Dykeman and all the Type 1 GRIT members, because having that resource there makes you feel less alone. You can ask questions, you can get support. I really don't know where I'd be without them. And thank you to Dr. Bernstein for writing his book and for giving all people with diabetes the chance to have normal blood sugars. He's just an amazing role model, and very, very grateful to have heard the story and to be able to follow all of those ideas. It's been turned something terrible into something that has really changed our lives in a good way rather than bad. So that's that. And thank you to yourself for having, you know, this wonderful opportunity for us to share our stories and hopefully spread the message. And one day everyone will have the opportunity that we've had.
That's fantastic. And didn't you say you had a website?
Yeah, I have a website. So it's called One Type One, and maybe we could put a link in the show notes or something.
Absolutely.
For people to just read a bit more of the story. Just some of the details of what we went through and a bit of the research into, you know, what it means to be low carb, and basically debunking some of the negatives that the doctor had come back with me to say, you know, you can't do it for this reason and that reason, and, you know, when you look into it, they're all false.
That's great. I'll definitely like that.
Cool. That'd be awesome.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that then. Thank you so much for sharing your daughter's story today, Judi. I'm really impressed by that. But anyways, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for your time. This is how Judi tamed her type 1.